Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is Jamie McDonald. I am the Vice President of Business Development at the Game Agency, and I want to thank everybody for joining today. Today, we're going to talk about the Training Arcade. I'm going to walk you through this great do-it-yourself platform, and we're going to focus on Scramble, which is the game for the week. This is part of a weekly or bi-weekly series that we've had focused on different games available in the Training Arcade platform. Thanks again for joining. Anyone who's new, this will be a great treat as we're going to walk through the details of how to build a successful Scramble game. I'm also going to be recording this, so anyone on your team maybe that couldn't join, I'll send the recording out after and be able to get that in front of everybody to share with your team. And for those of you who are current subscribers, welcome. Thanks for coming. Hopefully this will be interesting for you if you haven't yet used the Scramble game as part of your addition to your learning needs. I also wanted to let everybody know that if you've never taken a test drive of the platform, you could go to thetrainingarcade.com. There is a start your free trial button, and you could set up a 14-day trial, which will allow you to go ahead and test drive the platform, build out some sample games. You could either publish them as a SCORM package and test them in your LMS, or you can embed them in a course and see how they work. Obviously, we're looking for any feedback. So let's go ahead and get started here. I am going to share. Hang on one second. I'm going to share with you a different screen. Let's remove this. Okay, and I'm going to first show you one of our Scramble games. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to share with you guys is a couple examples of a Scramble game before we get into building the actual game. Because of Easter and Passover that both fall this weekend, we went ahead and built a really fun game that's based on trivia regarding Passover and Easter, and we're actually going to be sending that out today. The great thing about Scramble is that it is a type of game that's kind of like Wheel of Fortune without the wheel. You could either choose to unscramble words or individual words or full sentences. This is a game that has been used a lot at live events for some of our clients. It's great for group events where maybe someone in a group is controlling the device, but the group is answering the questions together and trying to unscramble as a team against other people or other groups in the room. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and show you what happens here. A lot of times we either ask for them to register on the game or at least just put in their initials for the leaderboard. You also, when you're building a game, have an option of putting in a early message screen. And this message could be anything that relates to what's about to happen in the game so that your learners can have an idea of what's to come. And then we also have the option for you to turn on or off the tutorial. So if you want someone to understand how to play the game, you can turn the tutorial on, and this just gives them a quick idea of what's to come. So in this particular instance, we are doing an unscramble of a full sentence. So what European country introduced us to this furry Easter character? So I believe the answer to this one is the Easter Bunny. You click on the words to create sentences. Was introduced in the 1700s by, and let's say I did it wrong on purpose, settlers. If you want to undo it, you just click undo, and then you can say, you can finish it that way, German settlers, and then you click submit, and you'll see that when you get the question right, it gives you additional hints, and these hints down here on the right side will help you be able to answer questions later if you're having a hard time. You'll also see here that I was provided with a feedback response. So if you get the question right or wrong, you can provide feedback, and that's an optional feature. So what I'm going to do now is move over to another example. This is a game that's also all about social hacking. Again, we put in some tutorials and quick messaging, and now this is an example of a game of a question that is specifically a word. So blank attacks occur via targeted emails. In this case, we're talking about cyber attacks, so the answer here is phishing. So you can simply click on the letters, and if you place a letter wrong and you want to put it back in the pool, all you have to do is click it and it'll return to the pool. But in this case, we're just going to keep going. So the answer is phishing. And then I'm going to click submit, and there we go. So that's kind of the front end of the Scramble game. You can put as many questions in the Scramble game as you want, but what I'd like to do now is take you to the back end. So what you're looking at here, if you have never been to the Training Arcade before, let me give you a little background before we jump into how you build a game. The Training Arcade is a do-it-yourself game authoring tool. So there are a library of 8 games in the tool today. Scramble is one of them. We also have 7 other games, including Jeopardy. And the interesting thing about Jeopardy, if you're not aware, is that we spent the last year negotiating with Sony and Jeopardy Productions for the rights to have the only official Jeopardy game in the training and education space. And the game looks and feels very much like the real game show with Jeopardy, Final Jeopardy, Daily Doubles, and Double Jeopardy, and so forth. We also have a jump game, a match game, which is very similar to one of the most popular game types out there, which is Candy Crush. We have a recall game, which is all about identification, memorization. We have a sorted game, which is like a grid, and so forth. So I can always send you more details on those games, but let's pop into how to build this. And the one thing I will tell you about this platform that's so great is it really does capture so much great data about what's happening in your learning. And the whole idea behind these games and using the platform is that you can build out a game in about 20 to 30 minutes, and you could deploy it very rapidly in any kind of learning environment. So if you are doing something that is in an instructor-led or a classroom setting, or even a large live event with hundreds or thousands of people, or in e-learning, the games are very easy to deploy, and you have a lot of options of how you want to get those games out to your audience. So when you're done building a game, there's a few things you can do. Each game that we build is web-based, and so however you name that, whatever you call the name, that will be embedded into the link of the game URL you create. And there's 2 options there. You can simply take that URL and you can embed it as a web object into a course. So if you're building a course in any of the leading e-learning authoring tools like a Captivator, Lectora, so forth, you can just simply embed it there. Another option, if you have an LMS, is you can download one of the 2 SCORM packages you see here, and then you can upload it into your LMS. And then the SCORM data will pass back to your LMS. Other things you could do is simply just take the link and text it out to your audience. You can email it to your audience. You can put it up on a big screen if you're in a live event and have people type it into their web browsers, or you could preload it on devices that may be used at live events. So there's a lot of flexibility there. The games are really all meant to be a knowledge retention tool. So the game agency in general, as a quick background, we've been around for 12 years, and we build out large custom solutions for our clients and have been very blessed with clients who come back time and time again. But what happens with custom game development is it tends to be very expensive. And so we really wanted to be able to come up with a product that would be cost effective and a do-it-yourself tool for clients who either may not have large training budgets, or maybe have never used games before and they want to take baby steps to seeing how effective they can be. So while the custom games are meant to be kind of serious games for learning, the Training Arcade platform is really the tool that you can use for knowledge retention and recall, and driving that extra layer of engagement and fun that your learning may need or require. Oftentimes there may be content that's kind of dull or dry, and you want to improve that. So that's where the Training Arcade can really come in handy. Before I jump into the game, I'm also going to show you the analytics of what you do capture in a live environment. So in this particular game, cybersecurity, which I just showed you here, we had set it so that there was no data capture of your name or email or even your initials, and that's why you're seeing this as anonymous here. But if you did set that, you would be able to see who the person is and whatever kind of unique identifier information about that person, so you could really dig deep into how that person did. But when you're looking at the data, there's 2 pieces to see. One is your player stats, and that's what you're looking at right here, which tells you how many users played, their high score, how many sessions in general, what the average session time was. But more importantly, you can click into an individual user and you can actually get a glimpse into how that person did. So in this particular case, this user played twice, and you can see how well they did during their gameplay. In this case, question stats, this is where you're going to get your aggregate data. So this is going to tell you how the group as a whole did and show you where the gaps in the learning are. So if you see that, oh my gosh, I just spent all this time teaching the audience and 70% of them missed a question, well, that'll really give you a good glimpse into going back and reteaching and making sure that the learning does not end before they've mastered the content. You can also take all this data and you can custom date range it. So if you want to compare days or weeks or months of different groups of learners, you can do that. You can also export the data as a CSV file and share it out with your team. And another option is you could even assign users to come in as viewers. And those viewers would be able to, you can just simply go into add user, You set them up as a viewer, you put in their name and email, and then you click save, and they'll get an invite to become a viewer, and then they can log in and they can view the data themselves. And that's an unlimited amount of people that you can have do that. We also have a leaderboard function. So if you're doing something, as I mentioned, in a live environment, you could set it so that the leaderboard appears on the game over screen on that person's device, but you can also have the instructor show a leaderboard up on the big screen, and that really brings about that friendly competition layer that you may be looking for. But let's move on to building a game. So the first thing you do is you click in the left panel here, New Game, and if you have a subscription to all the games, you pick the one that you want to build, and in this case, we're building Scramble today, so you simply would click on Scramble. And there's two parts to setting up a new game. One is really putting in the basic game information, which is really just picking from drop-down menus, and it takes you all of 2 or 3 minutes to do. And the second section is adding in your questions. So rather than me start a new one, I'm gonna go into a game that's already built and show you how that looks. So let's go to Cybersecurity Match. And you'll see here that in this game, we named it Cybersecurity Match, and because that was our name, it automatically populated into the game URL. We also set the default language to English. As you can see here, there are a number of different languages. So if your team needs global learning, you can create the game in one language, and later I'll show you how you download a translation template, and then you can upload it in all the other languages that you need. There's game settings, which are things like, do you want to set a timer for the entire game experience? Do you want to set a timer for the level? Do you want to choose how many levels you're going to have? Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong game. Sorry about that. Let's move on to Scramble. Back to Scramble. So you can set a default timer for all the questions. You can require a pass-fail if you'd like. So that could be set at 0 if you don't need this feature, or maybe you want to set it to 80 or 90%. You can also randomize questions. You can turn the tutorial on or off. So if you don't think your learners need a tutorial, that's optional, and you can turn it off. We recently added a new feature, which is a Learn More URL. And that's essentially if you wanted to take your learners and send them out somewhere else, at the end, when they hit the game over screen, their URL would be right there, and they can just pop out to whatever other website or destination you want to send them. In the informational pop-up section, this is where you have the option to message what's going to happen in the game before the game begins. And then this is where you have the option for registration. So you could either set it at no authorization, or you could load an authorized player list. And the cool feature about this is if you have a group of learners that you want to have access to a particular game and you don't want anybody else to have access, then you could load in a player list with their first name and email, and anyone else who tried to access that game who's not on your list would get an error message. We also have single sign-on available, so if that's something your organization needs, that's available and something we can talk about offline. You can set who your selected SSO provider is. We've worked with Okta and SAML and all of that. And then this is here where you have the option of choosing whether you want registration turned on or not. So if you do, you can require things like first name, last name, email, phone number, ID. We are also adding in very soon the ability to have custom fields so that you could put in additional things that may not be captured in these options here. And if you are having your learners access the games through your LMS, let's say, you don't necessarily have to turn registration on because they're already registering on the game through your LMS. And then you can turn leaderboard on or off. And the reason why having a leaderboard on is great, and most people choose this option, is because at the end of the game, the learner will see how they ranked against everybody else. And let's say they didn't rank high enough on the board, there's a good chance they're going to go back and try and beat their score and play again to become a master of the content. The next piece I want to show you are themes. So currently we have the origami blue theme picked, but there are custom skins that you guys can choose as well. So if you don't like one of the themes that we have for one of our games, you can always call us and we can talk to you about adding in custom skins that are very on brand for your purposes. In this particular one, this is just an example of one that we did for one of our clients where we used their colors and look and feel. In this particular game, let me go back to setting this at the original one we had. Oh, you also have background tracks you can choose. So if you want music to play in the background while they're figuring out the answers and unscrambling these sentences, you can pick one of these. And then, let's just click on no track. As far as customization goes, without there being any additional charges, you do have the option of customizing the very opening screen of the game, which we call the splash screen. You can do things like add your company logo, you can add a default title, you can upload an entire image to replace the normal image that we have there for the screen, and so forth. So all of that would take you about 2 minutes to do, and you would simply click save, and then you move on to the questions. So you'll see here we already have some questions added. And if you wanted to add more, you simply click Add Question. But I'll show you what happens here. So on this first question, we opted to make this a letter scramble instead of a sentence scramble. So you just choose the one that you want there. You can associate an audio file with your questions in Scramble. In some of our other games, you can associate a video or even an image. In Scramble, you can do an audio file. Then you have the option, or this is where you would put in the text for your question. We do have some parameters that we set for how long the questions and the answers can be. And the reason why is because all of our games were built to be fully responsive. And what that means is that we want them to appear visually correct on any kind of screen. So whether you're on a very small mobile device or you're on a large desktop or laptop, we want them to look good no matter what. So we do set certain parameters to help guide you. You can also decide if you want to update the timer. Even though you set it at default at 60 for all the questions, individually you can go in and change that timer on a per question basis. So if you find that there's a question that may be a little bit harder, you may want to up that potentially to maybe 90 seconds or 120 seconds. And then you can add in your corrector feedback or not. So in the second question here, you'll see it was a sentence scramble. And you'll see here that we did put some corrective feedback in. And so that's how you add in the additional questions. And then the translation feature I want to show you. So let's say you built this in English and you wanted to add in one other language. You could simply click on the language that you wanted to set it to. So let's say we pick Spanish, and you'll see on the left side here, all of your input from putting it in English would be on the left, and then you would type it in Spanish. If you didn't want to do it that way, another great way to do it is to take our translation template, and you can simply download the template, and I'll show you what that looks like when I load it up. And what you'll see here is that what I wrote, all my questions and answers and feedback are in English, and then you'll see along the top here, you have all the other languages available. So you can take this document, you can send it out to the team that you use to do your translations for you, and once it's done, you save it, and then I'll show you what happens here. You can simply then go to upload template file, and it'll load it back in. And the beauty of this is that, let's say you put in 10 different languages, and you can send out one single game to your entire learning audience, even if they're in other countries, and when they go to load the game to play, they would then be able to choose their local language, and it would automatically change. Like if they pick Spanish or German, it would automatically change everything in the game from English to that language. Okay, so that is, that's the part I wanted to show you about translations. And then we also talked before about publishing. So that's kind of the gist of how a Scramble game works. You do want to make sure that you save everything as you go. When you're ready to see how a game works, you simply launch it. So even if you've only put in the basics and maybe one or two questions and you want to see how it's turning out, you can launch it. You can see how it works. You can go back into the CMS here. You can update it as needed. And then you can go back to your launch button and see how that works. Another really cool feature is, let's say you build one game and you want to copy that game so that you have the same look and feel for another game. You can just simply click copy game, rename it, and then edit some of the questions in there so that you have a second game that looks and feels very much like the first game. So the last thing I want to tell you guys is that we do have a promotion running in April. So for those of you who have not used the Training Arcade, as I mentioned before, there's a 14-day trial you can take advantage of. The pricing for our product works like this. Any single game in the platform is $1,500. If you buy an 8-pack, which is the entire library, it's $6,000. So if you break that up by 8 games, that's $750. So you're essentially saving about 50% per game if you purchase it as a whole. We're running an April promotion. If you subscribe to the 8-game pack by the end of April, so April 30th of this year, we will throw in 10 additional admins, and those admins are essentially game creators. So when you subscribe, normally it comes with 1 admin. We will throw in 10 additional admins for you so that more people on your team have the option of using this. The really cool thing about setting up these admins is that you have some choices. So the admin is the person who actually would be the able to build games and edit any games in the platform. A creator is different. A creator can build games and they can edit their own games, but they can't edit or see any of the other games. So if you wanted like a super admin to go in there and be the one who kind of oversees everything, you can set that up as the main admin. And then anybody else you can set up as creators if you like. And then as I mentioned before, you could also set up viewers, and those people would have the option of just logging in to see data, but not necessarily to build games. So I am going to now stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to open up the floor for any questions. So if any of you guys have questions, please feel free to pop in. Any questions? And if not, I want to thank you all again for coming. We're going to continue to do this. I will say that next Wednesday, April 24th, we are doing a new Jeopardy webinar, which just got scheduled. And we're going to focus on the 5 benefits of why using a Jeopardy game would be helpful for your training. Of course, we're going to walk you through building a Jeopardy game and all the fun bells and whistles of the platform as well. But you can go ahead, if you want to register for that, you can go to thetrainingarcade.com, go under events, and you'll see it there. There's a registration link next to the Jeopardy event next week. So that's it for me. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Oh, I see a question coming in, so I'm not going to hang up just yet. Okay, so Christy, how do player stats register when they sign on through an LMS? Okay, so if they sign in through an LMS, then you're already going to know who they are simply because they're logged in through your LMS. But what we capture is the SCORM data. So the SCORM data is kind of limited. It captures things like who the person is, their high score, their level of completion, so their progress, etc. And that will pass back to your LMS. What it won't capture are all the other things that our database captures, like which questions they answered correctly and incorrectly, and how much time they spent on each question, and so forth. So if you want that additional data, you would have to log into the platform to get that. Otherwise, the SCORM data will pass back, and because they simply came in through your LMS, you'll be able to identify them that way. So I hope that answered your question. Any other questions from the group? Christy, feel free if you have other questions to reach out to me, of course. Once again, thank you guys. I appreciate this, and I will be sending the recording out to everybody. Have a great day.